Welcome back to Torah in 10, Parshas Vayeshev. I'm Jody Burkell, and I'm so excited to be here with you again. What's the life-changing idea Rabbi Sacks of blessed memory teaches us this week? He says, seen through the eyes of faith, today's curse can be the beginning of tomorrow's blessings. Rabbi Sacks shares a profound thought with us. We live life looking forward, but we understand it only looking back. In theory, we get it, but applying it to our daily lives, that's another story altogether, isn't it? We live our lives one day at a time. As the days and years pass, our life may seem like a random series of events, yet looking back, it begins to make sense. When our first son was in elementary school, we tried to move him to another public school for various reasons, but mainly that he would have more Jewish kids in his class, but it was still a public school. We tried twice to transfer him, and twice we were rejected. At the time, we were frustrated and disappointed. We couldn't understand why he didn't get accepted. A number of years later, when my husband and I were sitting in an assembly for Yom HaAtzmaut, in our son's new school, a Jewish day school, I remember saying to my husband, this is why he didn't get into that school. God had another plan for us. He was always meant to go here. Friends, the job we didn't take, or the job we lost, the relationship that didn't pan out, the door that may have closed, our disappointments and failures seen in retrospect many years later, can often turn out to be our deepest learning experiences and, surprisingly, a blessing. Our hindsight is always more perceptive than our foresight. We live life facing the future, but we understand life only when it's become our past. Nowhere do we see this more strikingly than in the story of Joseph in this Parsha. We begin on a high note. The Torah tells us, now Israel loved Joseph more than all his sons because he was the son of his old age and made for him, for those of us who know, a coat of many colors. Oh, I love that musical. But very quickly, this gift turns out to be Joseph's downfall. His brothers, out of jealousy, begin to hate him. When Joseph shares his dreams with them, they hate him even more. Things are going from bad to worse. His brothers want to kill him, but instead they throw him into a pit. And eventually, at the age of 17, they sell him into slavery in Egypt. There seems to be a ray of hope. He gets a job in the home of Potiphar, a wealthy Egyptian. But then Potiphar's wife tries repeatedly to seduce him, and when he refuses her, she accuses him of assaulting her. Joseph is thrown into prison. The situation is grim. But then another chance at redemption appears when two of Pharaoh's servants join Joseph in prison, and he interprets their dreams. Joseph asks one thing of them. In a last-ditch effort, he says, remember me when it goes well with you, and please show me kindness. Mention me to Pharaoh and get me out of this place. It's heartbreaking to read what happens next. The Torah tells us the chief cupbearer did not remember Joseph. He forgot him. It seems that all hope is lost, but the theme of the musical is go, 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 Joseph. So we know this is not the end of the story. Just 2 years later, at the beginning of next week's Parsha, we discover that this has all been leading up to Joseph's supreme elevation. Pharaoh makes him viceroy, second in command. So at 30 years old, he is now the second most powerful man in the ancient world. Talk about going from zero to hero overnight. But we all know the saying. Sometimes it takes a person years to become an overnight success. I believe there are two ways to travel through our life. One is believing that we are like a leaf floating in the breeze. The events of our life are mere happenstance, and there is only blind fate. But there's another view, the Jewish view, that Rabbi Sacks so beautifully describes as that God is with us as we travel through time. Sometimes we feel as though we are lost, but then we discover, as Joseph did, that he has been guiding our steps all along. Rabbi Sacks says, don't think you understand the story of your life at halftime. That is the lesson of Joseph. As I was preparing for this, I got to thinking about a TV show I love to watch and why I love it. America's Got Talent. I've been watching since the beginning. And when the show started, they had the contestants come up and perform their talent. And then the judges would give their feedback, and that would be it. But as the show continued through the years, the producers got smarter. Now, when some of the contestants step up on stage, they introduce themselves, and then the scene cuts to another video where they share the person's backstory, their disappointments, their failures, their challenges. It's then we begin to see how far they've come to get to this moment, and our hearts swell as our desire for them to win grows exponentially. Why? Because everyone is inspired by someone who, despite great challenges, has risen to accomplish great things. There's no greater example in the Torah of this idea than the story of Joseph. The hated brother who was thrown into a pit as a teenager has become the man who saves an entire region from famine, and who today we describe as Yosef HaTzadik, Joseph the righteous. Rabbi Sacks says that he became the first person in whom the promise to Abraham that through you all the nations of the earth shall be blessed. There was no way of knowing how the story would end had we stopped reading midway. We see through the experiences of Joseph, which continues in next week, God's hand at work, even when Joseph felt abandoned by every human being he had met. We see, looking back, that every episode that seems to be leading to tragedy turns out in retrospect to be the necessary steps towards saving lives and the fulfillment of Joseph's dreams. Rabbi Sacks teaches us that despair is never justified. Even if our life has been a series of unfortunate events, there is still hope. The next chapter of our life can be full of blessing. If we go through our days armed with the knowledge that the seemingly bad things that have happened to us this far are the prelude to the good things that are going to happen, because in Rabbi Sacks' words, we have been strengthened by suffering and given courage by our ability to survive. This awareness can truly change our lives. We have to know that in an instant, things can turn around. Remember, we are the people of hope, and we should never despair. This is the unbelievable legacy we have as Jews. Life seen this way, through the eyes of faith, can turn today's challenges and disappointments into the beginning of tomorrow's blessings. What a beautiful, life-changing idea. Wishing you all a Shabbat Shalom.